In the 1840s, deep in Arctic North America, a British expedition disappeared without a trace. 2 ships entered the ice carrying 129 men and the confidence of an empire. They were sent to finish what generations of explorers could not. No distress signal was ever received. What followed became one of the most unsettling absences in the history of exploration. By the early 19th century, Arctic exploration had become a matter of national prestige for Britain. Large sections of northern North America remained unmapped. The Northwest Passage, a sea route believed to connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, represented both economic opportunity and imperial dominance. Finding it was no longer a scientific ambition alone. It was a political goal. The British Admiralty had invested heavily in polar expeditions for decades. Ships were lost. Men died. But each failure was framed as progress. By the 1840s, confidence had grown that technology and discipline could finally overcome the Arctic. The environment was harsh, but it was considered manageable. In 1845, Sir John Franklin was chosen to lead the next expedition. He was 60 years old and highly respected. Franklin had served in multiple Arctic journeys before. He understood the cold. He understood command. More importantly, he was trusted by the Admiralty. His authority was unquestioned. 2 ships were assigned: HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. Both had been reinforced for polar travel. Their wooden hulls were strengthened with iron plating. Steam engines were installed to assist movement through ice. The ships carried scientific instruments, libraries, and carefully preserved food supplies. On paper, the expedition was prepared for several years of isolation. A total of 129 officers and sailors boarded the vessels. All were members of the Royal Navy. Their uniforms, ranks, and routines reflected strict hierarchy. Discipline was central to survival. Each man had a role. Each day followed structure. This order was expected to hold, even in the Arctic. In May 1845, the expedition departed England. Crowds gathered to watch the ships sail. Letters were written. Families were reassured. The journey crossed the Atlantic and reached Greenland by summer. There, the ships were last seen by European eyes. After leaving Greenland, the expedition entered Arctic waters. Communication ended. No further messages arrived. The men sailed into regions where ice movement was unpredictable and seasonal patterns were poorly understood. Charts were incomplete. Assumptions replaced certainty. The Arctic did not respond to preparation. It did not adjust to planning. And once the ships moved west, there was no path back. The first winter passed in isolation. HMS Erebus and HMS Terror remained locked in ice, unable to move in any direction. The crews adapted as they had been trained to do. Watches were maintained. Records were written. Meals were served at fixed hours. The structure of the Royal Navy continued, even as the world outside the hulls froze solid. When daylight returned, it brought no release. The ice did not break apart. Summer temperatures rose briefly, then fell again. The ships shifted only slightly, grinding against the frozen pressure that surrounded them. The men began to understand that this was not a temporary delay. It was a condition. Supplies were still available, but the strain began to show. Coal was consumed faster than planned. Fresh food was gone. Tinned provisions became the main source of nutrition. Scurvy appeared slowly, first as weakness, then as pain. Teeth loosened. Wounds healed poorly. The cold magnified every illness. Leadership became fragile. Sir John Franklin's health declined during the second year. His death, recorded quietly, marked a turning point. Command passed to senior officers, but the certainty he represented was gone. Orders continued to be given, yet they carried less weight against the ice. The Arctic imposed a new rhythm. Darkness lasted for months. Silence became constant. Movement outside the ships required careful planning. Frostbite claimed fingers and toes. Morale weakened, though discipline held. By the beginning of 1848, the situation had changed completely. The ships were still trapped. 2 winters had passed. The men were no longer waiting for rescue. They were waiting for survival to become possible. Discussions turned toward leaving the ships. This decision challenged everything the Navy stood for. Abandoning vessels was unthinkable. Yet remaining meant slow death. Sledges were prepared. Boats were fitted for travel over ice. Supplies were selected with precision, though none were sufficient. The plan was to march south toward known trading posts. The distance was vast. The terrain was hostile. The men were already weakened by cold and disease. Still, the order was given. When the ships were finally left behind, they stood silent in the ice. Their masts rose above the frozen sea. No signal fires were lit. No farewell was recorded. The expedition had crossed from exploration into disappearance. The march away from the ships began without ceremony. The men moved in small groups, pulling heavy sledges across uneven ice. Each sledge carried boats, food, and tools meant to sustain them on a journey that no one had measured accurately. Progress was slow. Every mile demanded strength the men no longer had. The Arctic surface was deceptive. Snow concealed pressure ridges and thin ice. Sledges overturned. Runners broke. Men fell and struggled to rise again. Frostbite spread quickly. Hands lost feeling. Feet stiffened inside frozen boots. The cold erased urgency and replaced it with exhaustion. As weeks passed, order dissolved. The disciplined structure of naval life could not survive the terrain. Groups separated, some by accident, others by necessity. Decisions were made without certainty. Turning back offered no safety. Moving forward offered no guarantee. Food ran out faster than planned. Tin supplies were heavy and difficult to transport. Hunting provided little relief. Game was scarce. Ammunition was limited. Starvation became visible. Bodies weakened. Faces thinned. Steps shortened. Some men collapsed and were left behind. Others stopped voluntarily, unable to continue. Their belongings were abandoned beside them. Boots, utensils, fragments of uniform. The landscape began to collect evidence of failure. Years later, search parties would find human remains along the coast. Skeletons lay where men had fallen. Some bones bore marks that suggested extreme desperation. These details were never fully explained. The expedition left no clear record of its final days. The Arctic absorbed the evidence slowly. Snow-covered campsites. Ice shifted. Objects were scattered across miles of shoreline. The men did not die together. They disappeared in fragments. The ships remained frozen behind them, still intact but unreachable. Their logs ended abruptly. Their cabins were empty. They waited in silence long after their crews were gone. By the time the last man fell, there was no audience. No witness. No message sent. The failure was total, but unseen. The expedition that had been sent to complete the map had instead erased itself from it. Years passed before anyone understood what had happened. Search expeditions followed the same routes. They moved slowly. They expected survivors. They found none. What they discovered came in pieces. A note sealed in stone. It confirmed the ships had been trapped. It confirmed the march south. It ended without explanation. Further along the coast, more traces appeared. A spoon with a name carved into it. A uniform button pressed into frozen ground. Bones scattered where no camp should have been. The Arctic did not preserve stories. It preserved objects. And even those were temporary. The ships were never seen again in that century. They sank quietly beneath the ice. Their masts disappeared. Their decks collapsed. No flags remained above the surface. Families waited in Britain. Letters were written and unanswered. Years turned into decades. The men were declared lost. Not recovered. Not buried. Official reports summarized the failure. Names were listed. Details were omitted. The disaster became a footnote. Exploration continued. Routes changed. Methods improved. Indigenous knowledge was finally respected. Lessons were learned without being spoken aloud. The Franklin expedition altered Arctic travel without ever completing its mission. It proved that preparation was not control. That discipline did not guarantee survival. That the Arctic did not yield to intention. As time passed, memory faded. The public moved on. New discoveries replaced old losses. The silence deepened. When the wrecks were finally found more than a century later, they rested exactly where the ice had claimed them. Cold. Dark. Undisturbed. No voices remained inside. No answers waited to be recovered. Only empty corridors and frozen rooms. The expedition did not end with a final moment. It ended with absence. With distance. With time. The men disappeared first. Then their tracks. Then their story. What remains now is stillness. A frozen sea. A forgotten journey. And a chapter of history that almost vanished completely. If this story mattered to you, consider subscribing. More forgotten history is coming.